and welcome back.
How are we getting on? Today we're joined by Aaron Stark. You may know him from his TED Talk. Aaron, how about you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Stark. I am a motivational speaker slash public speaker slash iconoclast who helps people find their way out of depression. And I was almost a school shooter.
So, just going back to that almost a school shooter thing, the elephant in the room. You did do a TED Talk on that, and what got you to that point? So, we don't really think about other people in the darkest points. We normally think, they're fine. Or they're just whatever. But I guess you were kind of one of the first people that bring up this conversation of what happens to a person when they get to the lowest point. So I know with you, your circumstances to get to that point were awful. You had gone to 30 or 40 different schools, all with new sets of bullies. Your family wasn't exactly the nicest. But I'd love to hear a story from you again, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, I grew up in a very, very chaotic family. My early life, my from 0 to 5 would be like a Stephen King movie, just horror. My birth father was the most violent human I've ever met. He was a Vietnam vet, and when he came back from Nam, he was just insane. By the time I was born, he had been back for like 10 years, and he was just nuts and super, super violent. So the first 5 years of my life were filled with like literally the very first memory I have of my whole life, the earliest memory I have of my entire existence, is me laying on my bloody mom's body, looking up at my dad while he has a tire iron in his hand, screaming up at him, "You just killed my mom." He didn't actually kill my mom, but he had beaten her bloody and unconscious underneath me. And that's the start of my life. And every kind of abuse you can imagine, physical, sexual, mental, watching my mom get raped and beaten, me and my brother getting beaten and abused, just massive abuse. And then when my mom finally escaped him, that's when the bouncing from school to school and place to place happened, because ended up running. First, it was initially running from him across the country, from battered women's shelter to battered women's shelter. And then when she finally got away from him, she got with my stepdad, and it switched from a Stephen King movie to more like Scarface. So it was massive drug use and crime. And that's when I started getting, like, for Christmas, I would have every toy. I would come out to Christmas morning, I would have every G.I. Joe, every Thundercats toy, and every He-Man toy. That's because my parents had stolen an entire delivery truck going to the toy store and hijacked it and stolen everything off of it. And we were taking it to the flea market to sell the crap. And my stepdad ended up spending years in prison for strong arm robbery. And between all the drugs and the violence at home, we ended up bouncing around from getting evicted or running from the cops. Like I said, I went to tons and tons of different schools, so many I can't even count. And everywhere I went, there was a whole new set of bullies, because I was fat, I was smelly because I was dirty, didn't really have anywhere stable to be. I was either sleeping on, I would have a bed occasionally, but all my stuff would be, I don't know, language. Is there a language barrier in this?
You can curse.
Okay. All of my shit would be terrible, and I would be just dirty and filthy. And I would get very reclusive, and the violence around me just kept on getting more and more intense. As I'm getting older, we're getting into, now we're not even to teen years yet. We're still 7, 8, 9 years old. We're running around from place to place, moving from state to state, from the cops mostly. And I'm seeing all of this just damage, just my parents getting cracked out in front of me, my just everything. My whole world is nothing but this sea of chaos. I have zero control over anything. And from then on, for the next 4 or 5 years, it felt like I had zero agency over my life whatsoever. I used to describe it that I felt like I was in a movie, that my life was a movie that I wasn't a star in. I was just sitting in the audience watching it pass me by. And as I got older, to now we're going into the teen years, now I start to adopt that darkness into myself, that the only way to protect myself from all the aggression around me was to get as aggressive as possible. So I started to get angry, started to get mean. And with every bully, I would go to a school and I would get, people would pick on me because I was fat, because I was smelly. They'd throw food at me. They'd dump food on my head. They'd mime me like I was shooting a harpoon at me. And I would be sitting in the early memory. Sorry, I'm bouncing around a bit, trying to give you a timeline. Early memory of one of those was sitting in a locker room. I was in a school locker room at like fifth or sixth grade, and the whole day the class had been throwing a bunch of people in the class, not the whole class, of course, but a bunch of bullies in the class had been throwing balls at me, like basketballs, footballs, just pelting me with any balls they could get. And so I'm sitting at the end of the locker, and dude just walks up next to me, like slams my head into the lockers. And I stand up and try to fight. He turns around and starts beating me, and a bunch of kids start beating me up. And I come home, and there's a big old black spot, bruise all down my spine. And my mom's only response is, well, next time beat their ass too. And the violence just became the way to communicate. And so I got very depressed and very alone, very isolated. Going up to when I was like 13, 14, now I start getting, I describe it like wrapping the darkness around me like a shield. Like that depression, you start to push outward with it. And best way to describe it is kind of like a spiky exterior. Like I made myself unappealing on purpose so everybody around me would be unappealed by me. Because when you hate yourself enough, you tell yourself you're worthless enough, you're going to believe it. And then you do everything you can to make everybody else around you believe it too. And that's exactly what I was doing. And that was the shield. At the heart of it, really, I was just a depressed kid who was alone and isolated and abused and really loved poetry and comic books. And they were the only things I got to carry with me. The only thing that seemed to be permanent in my life were my comic books. Because everything around, there were multiple times around that age where we'd be running from place to place. Literally, I'd be in a house, and then someone would burst through the door at 4 o'clock in the morning, throw a duffel bag at me saying, grab all your shit. You have 15 minutes to grab everything. We need to get out of here. And I would have 15 minutes to get the most important belongings that I would have, get them into one spot, throw them in the back of a beat up pickup truck with 2x4s with a plastic tarp thrown over it as the trailer. And we would get in the back of that and then drive across country to get away from the cops or whoever my parents were running from on whatever occasion it was. And the only things that I would ever grab were my comics, because that was my escape. So that was the biggest thing for me, were my superhero books. And that spiral just kept on getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, when I am, not finally, we'll go up to where I'm about 14, 15 years old. Now I'm starting to enter high school. And I am just a filthy ball of depressive mess is the only way to picture it. Just dirty constantly. I take showers like once every couple of weeks. Homeless, because at home I can't exist at home. If I go home, there's nothing but drunken fighting and just massive violence. So I would like go home, walk in the door. No one would see me walk in the door. I go to sit in my bedroom. I'd hear some rummaging outside, step outside, and my stepdad would have my mom up against the wall by her throat and like picked up off the ground, and I'd have to beat him off of her and beat him down, knock him down, get him off of her. And then she would attack me because I would be getting into the fight with him, even though I was trying to protect her, because that drunken chaos is just this fuel. And so I couldn't live at home anymore. So I ended up being homeless right around when I was like 14 years old. And I ended up sleeping in fields and parks and on friends' floors. And I didn't really have friends per se. I had what I would call disaster groupies, because they were the kids around me that wanted to watch the car crash. They just wanted to watch the flame out and wanted to watch the disaster. By this time, that's pretty much all my life was. I was like a dark unicorn. Like I was the one kid in school that really was going through all the shit that everybody else wanted to go through. At least if that's what it felt like. And I'm sure the other kids were going through too. Nowadays, I don't want to minimize that at all. I'm positive other kids were going through that same experience I was. But that's what it felt like to me at the time, was that I was just some kind of weird like thing people were looking at. Just as dehumanized from the people around me that were saying they were my friends as I was from the people who were abusing me, telling me I was a monster and I was a piece of shit, I was worthless. And I started cutting myself. It was the only, I didn't really have any other emotions that I had any control over. It was just all pain and anger and rage and dealing with my chaos and trying to find a little bit of solace and not being able to do it. But when I cut myself, that was mine. It was pain, but it was mine and it was real. And so it started as a soothing thing and ended up being very, very self-destructive. And I'm homeless, during this time, there's an important character that came into my story right around when I was about 10, 12 years old. His name is Mike. Okay. Mike was my actual best friend during my youth. Mike lived down the street from me at one of the houses we lived at. And he had the polar opposite existence that I had. He had a loving family, nice, friendly. That family still lives in that same house to this day, big 3-story house with a nice backyard. And in that backyard, there was a shed. And Mike was always like my safe base. So whenever I was bouncing back and forth or going from state to state, or when I'd move back, I would be in a brand new house in a new city. Mike never moved. And I memorized Mike's phone number. And so his house was like home base. So when I would end up getting homeless, getting kicked out of my house or leaving because of all the violence, his shed ended up being my like solace, because it was dead of winter, so it was cold as hell, and it was middle of the night, and his shed was the only place that I would be able to be at. And he would like sneak me down food because his parents wouldn't let me sleep in the house because I was dirty and smelly, and if I sat on their chair, and I would stink up the entire place. And I was a bad influence on their son, like legitimate. And so he would sneak me down food, and I was sleeping in the shed. And there was one night where I was cutting really badly. I was about 16, 17 years old, and I was cutting myself extremely badly. And the blood was pooling down underneath me in the shed. The shed was this dirty little dingy tool shed, and the like wood slat roof with gaps in between it, and rain was just pouring down. So the chair I was sitting in was like this big poofy recliner chair, kind of like the chair I'm sitting in now, only not leather. And it was this big like fabric recliner poofy chair, and it was cobwebs and dirt because it had been there for months. And I'm looking at the ground at this giant pool of blood underneath me, thinking, I need to get myself some help. If I don't get myself some help, I'm going to die. I need to do something now. And so I did the only thing I could think of to do, which was the next morning, I knocked on Mike's back door, asked his mom for the phone book, and called social services. Because through my life, social services had tried to intervene a couple times and tried to get involved. And that was a couple of the reasons why we ended up running, that social workers tried to contact us. So I thought, hey, social services could help. So I called them, and they set an appointment for later that afternoon. And I got some bus fare from Mike's mom. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning when I called, and the appointment was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And so I got on the bus and went down there. By the time I got there, they had actually called my mom, and they brought my mom in too. And I sat down, and they asked me what my problem was, and I pulled out a bloody razor blade that I had in my pocket, square style razor blade, the kind you have in like a box cutter. And it was still covered in blood from the night before. And I threw it on the table, and I said, that's my problem. I said, I feel like I'm at the bottom, and I feel like I'm just going to lose it. I feel like there's nothing for me whatsoever. And my mom, because she spent her whole life running from authorities and getting people to not try to pay attention to her, she was one of the best liars I'd ever met. She got them to believe that I was just making it all up, and that I was just doing it for attention, and that it was just something I just always did. And so they sent me home with her. And as we're driving away from there, we get a couple blocks away. She turns to me with this evil look on her face and snarls and said, you should have done a better job. Next time I'll buy you the fucking razor blades. And my brain just shattered. I'm like, okay, you think I'm fucking dark, I'm gonna be dark now. Like, I just went on a full scorched earth. I kind of laughed. I'm like, okay. And every positive thing in my life, I went on a mission to burn it to the ground. For the next 7-8 months, I just destroyed every relationship I could have. Every friendship that I possibly had, I burnt it to the ground. I went into, during that time frame is when I went in and snuck into as many family members' closets as I could get into, and everybody's picture albums, and destroyed every photo of me as a kid. I tried to erase myself from the family and from existence. So I went in and just burned down everything, and literally got all the pictures and just burned them in a big pile. And after that period of just scorched earth time, where now I've ruined every bit of stability I have. I don't even have my shed to sleep in. I don't have anywhere to sleep at all. I'm now sleeping in the field behind Casa Bonita, which is a big Mexican restaurant here in Denver. If you ever watch the show South Park, there's an episode of South Park about Casa Bonita where Cartman runs through it, sings the Casa Bonita song. That's the restaurant I'm talking about. I was in the field behind that. And I was at that spot again where I was like, I'm going to die. It was the middle of the night. I got to do something. I'm at the very bottom. If I don't do something, I'm going to die. I need to get myself some kind of help. And so I cried out for help again. And this time I didn't warn anybody I was coming, because last time when I warned them, they called my mom in, so I wasn't going to warn them this time. So this time, across the street from the school I was at, there was a place with a sign that said mental health. And I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know where it was for, but I knew it said mental health. So I went in and I asked to see somebody, and they let me see. There was a place with therapists, so let me see a therapist. But she was young and untrained, and I don't remember exactly what she said to me, except for the last thing that she said to me, because it was the most impactful thing that she said, which was, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. I can't help you." And I walked out of that door, and my brain just completely shattered. And I discovered that all of that tsunami of pain that I'd been living in, that I described, that big hurricane of pain and anger, and looked like it was a movie that I wasn't watching, just this big chaotic thing. At the bottom of that, there's something really scary. That underneath all of that tornado of pain, at the very bottom, it gets really quiet and it gets really still, because when you really don't have anything left to lose, you don't have anything left to care about. And I decided that I was going to scream out, and they were finally going to hear me. And that the plan just crystallized it immediately, because I had basically already had it formed. I had all those friends, those disaster groupies I had talked about, because they just wanted to watch the car crash. When we were all sitting around hanging out, instead of talking about like video games or friends or girls or sports, we'd talk about killing people. We'd talk about, well, if you're going to kill 10 people, how would you do it? If that would be like the fantasy football of the group. Like if you were going to kill a lot of people, what would you do? And I already had the plan already talked about. I already knew what I was going to do. There were two targets that I was going to have. It was either going to be my high school or the mall food court down the street. And the only difference between those two would have been the time that I would have get the gun. It would have been either, if school was in session, go to the school. School was out of session, go to the mall. And getting a gun would be actually the most easiest mundane part of it, because there was some gangbangers that hung out next to the ROTC building that knew me, because I was sleeping in the field, sleeping in the park across from the school, and I was obviously not a narc. They sold drugs to my family, and like they knew me. I didn't know anybody by last name or anything, but nobody needed that. And they had brought guns to school before. This was mid-'90s, so they had brought in handguns and stuff to school and shown them. And like, hey, they showing off guns in school. I had seen them. And so I went to him like, hey, can you get me a gun? Hopefully one that shoots a lot of bullets. He's like, yeah, sure. Give me an ounce of weed. And at the time, again, this was mid-'90s, so an ounce of weed is not as cheap as it is today. This was like $300-400 worth of marijuana. But to me, again, not a hard thing to get. My parents were drug dealers, and my family was a druggy house. And so I walked in. There was a kid that constantly had weed in his pocket, sleeping on my floor. I grabbed an ounce off of him and took it down to the guy. And I took it to him. I was like, all right, dude, give me 3 days. I'll get that for you. And so that was it. And my plan was set. And luckily, I wasn't as alone as I had thought, because looking back on it now, I think what I was doing was saying goodbye. I was kind of like closing off friendship. And I went to Mike's house. And when I went there and knocked on his door, he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't have any details what was going to happen. He just was like, dude, come on in. Something is terrible is going on, but I don't know what's up, but you're going to be okay. You're all right. Sit down, have a meal, have a shower. You're going to be okay. It'll be all right. And he treated me like I was a person when I didn't even feel like I was a human. And it changed my life. And I ended up spending the weekend with him. I never went and got the gun, and he diverted my whole plan just by giving the love to the people who he thought deserved it the least. He saved my life.
Wow. You must owe him a lot, man. Like, you must think of him as some kind of savior.
Oh yeah, he's the best friend I've ever had. He's still my best friend to this day, uncle to my kids. I talk to him all the time. I was messaging jokes with him on Facebook just a couple hours ago. Yeah. Dude's the best. He's literally the only guy in the world that if he gets in a fight with my wife and calls her a bitch, I'll be like, well, baby, what'd you do to make him call you a bitch?
There you go.
So.
Yeah, that's amazing. That even just having that one person was able to stop you from doing that.
And it wasn't like a switch. It wasn't like there was a switch that all of a sudden my world was better. It was just he changed my attitude. And honestly, it shifted from outward to inward, and I got more inwardly depressed. And I was depressed for a couple more years and still suicidal until he saved my life again. I'll give you another quick story of that, because he ended up saving my life for the very last time I ever tried to kill myself, which was a birthday. I'm pretty sure it was my 19th birthday. I might have that confused because the years are really hazy at that time of what was not sane and not around the calendar. But I believe it was my 19th birthday, and I was planning on killing myself. I had gotten a whole lot of drugs from my mom. I had stolen a ton of cocaine, stolen a ton of her pills because she was a walking medicine cabinet with Percocets and Vicodins and most of her Laxatives and shit like that. So I stole a bunch of her pills, and I got a whole bunch of LSD. And I was planning on overdosing again in the field behind Casa Bonita. And it was I was just planning on ending my life. And since I had interventions in the past, I'd actually made a point that day to not act like anything was different. I was trying to not act like I was upset at all. I was trying to just disguise it, act like there was nothing wrong with me whatsoever, and just go about my day until I was going to end it at the nighttime. And so I spent my afternoon with Mike. And Mike's a really social guy, and he hangs out with a lot of people, has a social group of his own. In his social group, there's this girl, Amber. And Amber was a friend of Mike. She's a friend of mine, but not my friend. She's like cordial with me. She's never unfriendly with me, but she was always Mike's friend. So Mike would be like, hey, we're going to go kick it at Amber's house for a couple hours and watch a movie or something. I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to listen to an album, watch a movie, whatever. And so I figured we were going to go over there. It was a normal activity hanging out with Mike, and then I was going to go still finish my plan off. But it wasn't that at all. And when we arrived at Amber's house, it was actually a surprise birthday party for me. And there was like 14 people there to hang out with me and have a party. And they had made me a blueberry peach pie. And I went in the bathroom and took the drugs in my pocket and dumped them all in the toilet and spent the week having with people that loved me. And that was the last time in my life I ever tried to kill myself.
That is...
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. That part, that's just kind of like divine intervention, nearly.
Yeah, dude saved my life in more ways than, and Amber too. And again, she's still a friend of mine to this day. I love her to death. I hang out with her all the time.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to touch on was how vicious American bullies are. Mm-hmm. That kind of bullying, I don't think ever happens here. at least I'm 19. I've been to a lot of students. I've never heard of anything as bad as that.
Oh, it's
Uh,
bad.
yeah,
And I'm
American
sure,
bullies
and I'm
are
sure that
rough.
in my scale, that mine's not even compared to some of the worst ones. I've heard some stories of ones that are way worse than mine.
I think you're up there. I think you're very much up there with the worst cases of bullying ever. Because 30 to 40 schools and all these unique experiences that weren't pleasant with
Yeah.
dickheads, you know?
Well, there
Uh,
was like, it would be things like, remember that old movie, The Addams Family?
Yes.
Yeah. Those old movies from the early 90s, The Addams Family. And the character Pugs the Addams. When that came out, there was a good year that every school I went to, I was Pugs the Addams. And it would just that kind of, it was mainly fat shaming and smelly and dirty. And I think
yeah.
that there's something in American schools and in schools in a lot of countries around the world, because I know that you say in Ireland it might not be that way, but I've heard some stories from kids in the UK and some stories from kids in England in particular
Oh,
that have much more
UK's
similar.
crazy. Stabbings happen all the
Yeah,
time in schools.
yeah, and there's there's something in the tribalistic sectarian nature of schools that really fosters that xenophobia that I think is at the heart of all of this. At the heart of all of it, at the heart of even my pain, was the hate of the thing that's the other. I was smelly and I was dirty and I was going through a lot of pain. So everybody looked at me like I was a broken monster. No one looked at me like I was a person actually going through some shit. They looked at me like I was a monster, like I was either I was a monster that needed to be feared or a project that needed to be fixed.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't a person from either side.
But you don't
And
gain
and in,
social status from helping people,
exactly.
or at least
And
with kids.
yeah, and in school, that's it's they have that minus any innate morality or ethics, it seems, and it's like
Yeah.
a pool of sharks. And yeah, it can be really bad. And the advice I give is just keep going, because the older you get, the more you realize that small time of pain is outlasted by a whole lifetime of great experiences that come afterward.
Yeah. And obviously, not everyone gets to do a TED talk, but
Yeah.
you got to go do one about your life and the tragedy of it as well, and what got you out of it. But like my friends, I was telling them you were going to be on the show. I was telling them,
Uh-huh.
oh yeah, talk about the guy who became a school shooter, and two of us seen it, but one of the other two, he says he was way too scared to click on it because it would obviously be a very deep thing. I was wondering, like, why would someone be scared of hearing about something like this? I think it was something to do
So,
with like we all know we can get low enough. Come on, everyone can get low enough to do something dangerous. We
yeah,
all have a breaking point, and I guess it's the fear of dealing with that.
I think it's that, and that combined with the fear of touching that deep emotion is because with no judgments, I just want to ask a question about your friend. In his outward life, is he at all a antagonistic and or trollish kind of personality? Does he do any kind of like weird jokes on the internet or any kind of
Yeah,
weird jokes with his friends? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Then that's that right there. That is the prime. So in this frame that I've been doing this, I've had a lot of responses from a lot of people, and the biggest amount of change and cathartic growth from an emotional level that's happened has been from that particular demographic. It's been from the kids who are outwardly they're trolls and they try to do things just to get a rise out of people, and they try to push those buttons, and then they see my story and they see themselves, and they
yeah,
see that that is just a mask. and it's just as fake as the people that they're talking to. And I'm not jumping on your friend, not calling him fake, just talking in general. That that facade can be very. It takes a lot of effort to construct, and it takes a lot of effort to build that wall of who you are. That I'm the aggressive person. I'm the troll. I was the monster. I'm the dark aggressive genius who's going to be the one who's smarter than you and darker than you. That's who I was. Okay, it takes a lot of effort to build that. It takes a lot of effort to maintain that, especially over years. The older you get, the more effort that takes to maintain, to keep that persona, and to have something that smashes that persona to bits and makes you look at what's really going on, at the real reality of it, and not falling into any kind of, again, not looking at the social status of it. You don't get social status from talking about this shit. You get reality from talking about this shit. You get real. I don't get the responses I get are never, oh my God, that's fantastic. Would you like to come on my cooking show? It's, oh my God, this is a deep story. Can I tell you about how I was hurt? And these are from people interviewing me, celebrities and reporters and like CNN people, and like that break down and cry in my arms. And it's because there's something about it that it's really off-putting, especially for men. We're told as men that we can't have those emotions, and we're set up socially that we're not supposed to feel these things. And if we do, then that's some form of weakness, and that's some form of being weaker or being lesser. And I will challenge any of those people to say that I am in any way weak or lesser after they watch my video. Tell me that that's weak in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Tell me that standing in front of literally millions of people crying on stage is weak. Go ahead, because and then stand in front of the fire that comes after it. See what happens. And that it's not. It takes more effort. To me, the weak part of it is conforming your identity and conforming your sense of self based on what you think your friends think is cool, based on what you think everybody else around you wants to be, and what their opinion of you might be. The real strength of it comes from just being yourself. Because you're right, that's the true universal thing. We all feel this. We all, the only real bipartisan thing is pain, isolation, and loneliness. It's really the only thing that connects us all. I've had the same deep conversation about that pain and loneliness with atheists and Christians, with Democrats and Republicans, with conservatives and liberals, with the far right and the far left. And if you take away all of the outside trappings and all of the stuff that we stick on ourselves to color ourselves into who we are, like I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, I'm this, I'm that. If we strip all those badges off, we're all just people. And every one of us just
shared experiences.
Every one of us at the end of the day just wants to be held and told that we're going to be okay. That's it. That's the heart of it. And to get in touch with that emotion is scary. So I can understand why your friend would be reluctant to, because I would encourage him to, though. And after he does, please have him contact me, because I would like to talk to him personally about it if he has any questions. Because that kind of, I think that's also important. Because here's the timeline for me that I went through. It wasn't just the TED Talk. So my first thing was right after Parkland, the Stoneman Douglas massacre in Florida. It was 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. 3 years ago in February. That I was sitting around the TV watching TV with my wife and my oldest daughter, and we were having this big tearful discussion about how could someone ever get to that point? How could you ever do that? And I went to the bathroom, sat on the toilet, and wrote a Facebook post. And in that Facebook post, just a quick Facebook post, I said, I was almost a school shooter. And we need to give love to people we think deserve it the least because they need it the most. And pay attention to the kids on the fringe instead of pushing them further out into that dark. Remind them that it's okay to be here too, and you can come back in from that dark. You don't have to stay out in that dark and be on the fringe. You can be part of us again too. And when I went to bed, after I had a big discussion with my family, that started a big conversation with them. Then I went to bed and woke up, and that post had went Facebook viral. So that got like a couple thousand likes and shares. And so my wife was like, hey, you might want to send that to the local news. The Channel 9 News might like that. And so that day I emailed Channel 9 News, the reporter. We watched it. His name's Kyle Clark. And we emailed him that morning and on Twitter. And the very next day, I had a camera crew at my house. And so they filmed me reading the Facebook post. Pretty much all that video was just me reading that Facebook post. And that video got 17 million views in a week.
Wow.
And I immediately got put into getting tens of thousands of messages in my inbox, literally over 50,000 messages from people all over the planet that weren't just, hey, that's a really cool story, but like we were just talking about, it was, hey, that's a cool story, and here's everything that ever happened to me. Here's all of my diet. Okay, so literally all over the world: Pakistan, India, New Zealand, Australia, Sweden, Afghanistan, every state in the U.S., Canada, every country in South America, pretty much everywhere in the UK. I'm pretty sure I've hit everywhere in the UK, like everywhere except for Antarctica, it feels like. And it's all the same. There's no difference from the message I got from that kid in Pakistan. Okay, the most polar opposite to our culture, the I could think of, Pakistan or maybe Chinese. And I've got messages from both sides of that, and the conversations are the same. It's, I go to school, kids pick on me because they don't like who I am inside. They don't like what I think about. I can't talk about how I feel, and how can I be who I am without getting hurt? The kid in Pakistan, they told me he couldn't talk about getting bullied because they would kill him. So he sent me like 9 paragraphs, and he's still a friend of mine on Facebook. He's in my You Are Not Alone group. He's like, how can I not respond? So out of that, I personally responded to 98% of those 50,000 messages.
Were there any negative messages? Were there anyone saying
okay,
you made it up?
Let's do it. Let's do a quick game. Do a guess. Guess out of that 50,000 messages, how many to this day are negative? Negative meaning not just some negative comment on a YouTube video, but directed actually to me, sent directly to me. Negative. How many?
I'm gonna make a guess at about 40% were insults.
About half.
Try 15. Not percent.
15.
Only 15.
15
Wow.
messages.
Oh.
Sorry, we overshot there. My bad.
I got the bow over here, and I just shot the arrow way too far.
10 of those negative messages are blood related to me.
Oh, come on. Well, actually, no, that makes a bit of sense.
So out of that means 5 strangers saw my video out of 50,000 initially, and now we're up to 17 million on that video. My TED Talk just this morning crossed 11.8 million views, and I'm up to 5.
Okay. Well, I understand the family thing.
Yeah, no,
they feel like
I had to block my mom, my brother, my grandma, most of my extended family. I had to block them on all my social media because they come attack me. And not saying I'm lying. They're attacking me about how could I bring up family business in public, and how can I make the family look bad? And my response is, well, I'll stop the instant you tell me one thing I'm saying that's not the truth. And if you're mad about me saying what happened to me 25 years ago, but you're not paying attention to who I am now, then I'm not the one that has the fucking problem.
Yeah, I don't think you're the one with the problem at all, Aaron. You are.
Yeah.
You are the hero of that story, definitely. I was going to ask, but you have already answered. Do you still talk to your mom or your stepdad or your dad?
My stepdad's dead. I think my dad's dead. My stepdad dying was kind of what freed me up to this. No, I don't know. I haven't even had any contact with my birth father since I was like. Last time I saw him was when I was 15, and what I told him was if he ever sees me, I'd kill him. And to this day, I'd stand by that. That guy deserves it. He's a very, very violent man. But I think he died like 10 years ago. I think that he.
Okay.
Coming from that dark place, do you not think he might have been in something similar after Vietnam?
Oh no, I'm positive of it. Not only that, but he was even more traumatized than that. He was circumcised at 15.
That's rough. That is very
rough. Because his parents caught him masturbating.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
So I'm positive that he went through some shit. So, but again, they're to me, there's a line, and that line is rape and sexual assault. And once you cross that line, then the things you've done, while you can repent, you cannot be forgiven.
Yeah.
And so.
Like, you didn't go as far as your father did, by any means.
No.
You taught about
No.
a school shooting. He did all these terrible things and abuse for
and
years.
And I've had conversations with prisoners in jail who have asked that same kind of question about what's the difference between it. And it's that once you take thought into action, because all of us have those thoughts. Every one of us has those thoughts. You could be standing in the line next to you and imagining brutally murdering the person standing next to you. Like people have these thoughts. People never want to talk about it. People never want to talk about it. But people have it.
Yeah.
And
you said that now. In my head, I was kind of denying it. But if I think about it, I probably got irrationally angry at someone for no reason and thought something like this.
And we socially, we laugh it off in different ways. Road rage. You know, how many times have people been driving and screaming the obscenities at someone, and all of a sudden be in a blinding rage because they cut them off?
Yeah.
And like the madness of crowds, how you're in a crowd and all of a sudden there's a fight and now there's 30 fights and nobody knows why. You know, like that we have this darkness in us that people refuse to look at. But I think that if we examine it more and look at it, we'll have a much better time rectifying it, because that was the biggest. You might ask later on what my recovery part was, and that was the biggest step. I was honestly going through my life and going to the people that hurt me and going through a period of acknowledgement, that not confronting them, not to be aggressive and not to like, you need to pay, you did this and you need to pay, but just blatantly to be like, this happened, I know this happened, and our relationship is fundamentally changed because of it. And from here on out, our relationship is different. And it was not at all about their response. I didn't care what there was. Like, it was literally like my aunt sitting at a bar next to me and leaning over, oh, you love me. Like, no, I don't. I don't love you. You tried to carry yourself on my front lawn and then you tried to molest me. I don't love you. And so that kind of cathartic, like getting it off of my chest, had nothing to do with their response. Like, she blew up at me. The next person I yelled at, or I yelled at, I didn't yell at them. The next person I did that to, I said what happened. They shut down or whatever. And to me, respond how you're going to respond. This is about my life, me coming to grips with what happened to me. And so I think that if more people had that kind of openness to be able to look at themselves and examine carefully the real things that compose them, both good and bad, I think that we'd get further as a society. Because I think that is part of what's driving us apart with this right-left divide that's going on right now, is that people are getting pushed to those fringes, and they're getting the positive reinforcement that I mentioned earlier, that everybody just wants at the end of the day to be hugged and told them they're okay. Everybody just wants positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for that positive reinforcement, but you find it in the most negative place possible, then you're going to do the most negative things to get positive reinforcement. Yeah. So if and the best example of that is back in the day with all those bullies I would go to. If I had a school, I go to a school and there'd be 5 bullies on one side that would pick the shit out of me. But I'd probably have 5 kids on the other side. They'd be like, no, stop it. He's okay. Leave him alone. And like be on my side. And we'll usually balance out at a school. And that was in-person schooling. But now we have social media. Where now that bully, he has a whole subgroup, a whole subculture. It's going to tell him how to be a bully, and then give him points on how to be the best bully, and then reward him for being the best bully. And so he's going to do the best he can to get the positive adulation that he wanted in the first place. He's just going to get it by being the most negative thing possible.
Yeah. It is.
And that's how we end up with white nationalists. That's how we end up with white nationalists.
Okay. Yeah. With the whole right-wing and left-wing thing, the best poster that I ever seen was like a left-wing and right-wing. We're still part of the same bird.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think, like, if you spend your time online It's an easy trap to fall into. If you watch one Ben Shapiro video, soon you're going to be looking up like how the far left is the Marxist, anarchist. Yeah, but then if you're on the other
flip
side,
side's also true. Yeah.
yes, you watch one. I haven't really delved into the far left stuff, but I'm sure if you probably find yourself thinking that Ben
Democracy
Shapiro.
Now. If you put on a Democracy Now video, and you're going to be falling down that same rabbit hole of demonizing the right. The difference there is that, and I don't want to get into a political difference discussion with that between right and left, but I think that the expression of each wing tends to be different in that the left side tends to laugh at their extremists, whereas the right tends to push out their extremists for everybody else to laugh at. I guess it's the best way to put it.
There's a difference between being conservative and saying, I don't think we should do this because of this, and then a Nazi. There's a big difference.
Yeah, big difference. And that line gets crossed, and I deal with a lot of getting people out of that extremism. That line gets crossed when you're searching for that positive reinforcement, and you find it with someone who fills up the spots that are deficient in your life with hate and with things that xenophobia that's at the heart of it all, that fear of the other, the fear of the different, and the fear that someone else is different than me. And on my side, on the left side, it tends to mostly right now be manifesting as, well, we should just break apart the country. We should just split apart. Maybe there should just be, California should just secede. And I'm like, no, we need to stay together. We need to remember, like you said, that we're two wings on one bird. And we need, in order to fly, we need to keep on flapping, because people have gone down this road before. And it is a bad road to go down.
It's a bad road,
if we break apart and we let the extremists take over, then it is just a recipe for disaster. So I continually, on my social media, I'm always posting Lincoln quotes, because we need to keep the union together.
I'm sure you probably get a bit of slack for that, because people don't like Lincoln at the moment.
I'm fine with that. They can not like Lincoln all they want, but he was the one that kept the union together, so let's do
it. Just going back on that for a second.
Yeah.
I feel like extremism can lead to something similar to what your experience was. Obviously,
very much.
People who go as far as trying to kill a president,
or even planning a governor.
Yes,
someone tried to kidnap. Someone tried to kidnap the governor last week.
I heard about that. We talked about it yesterday. It was That's crazy though. That's pretty crazy. But just
that is that phenomenon exactly of the extremists who. Because their social media just got leaked today, where they're like their training videos and their interpersonal messages, and it's that same spiral of, I hate this person, I hate him too, I can hate him better, I'm the best hater and I hate him better than you do, and it turns into this negative positive contest. And when that becomes isolated, and you combine that with a disillusion of objective fact and an embracing of aggression as a form of communication, it can definitely lead to more people like me.
And coming to this communication point, someone who has been thrown under the bus before, but is an amazing person, similar to yourself, is it Daryl Davis? And Thomas, am I right there?
Yeah, I know you're right there.
Daryl Davis, the black man who was at the KKK rally?
Yes.
Yeah, he converts KKK members through conversation.
Yeah, I love him. He's a great guy.
He's amazing.
I've seen people call him a Nazi, and I think that you must be pretty loopy if you think someone who's doing work like this is a Nazi. He doesn't get paid for that. It's voluntary. He does this for fun, to help people.
He does. It's not for fun. It's not for fun. He does it because he loves it and because he has to. It's the same reason I do what I do. I'm sitting here playing video games, and I'll get a message from someone out of the blue that, oh my God, I want to hurt myself. I don't know what to do. And I'll spend the next 3 hours talking them down off the ledge, not for fun. Just because if they figure out somehow that I'm the one that they can open up to, then I'm going to let them open up to me. Like, If you can do it, do it. If you find a way to help, then help. And Daryl is, I don't know him personally. I would love to get in contact with him personally because he seems to be a great guy. But he's doing really good work, because that kind of outreach, it ties in a lot with what I said earlier. When you're treated like a monster by everybody, then you demonize them back. And these extremists who are getting pushed out, these racists, the KKK, the neo-Nazis, part of their identity is the fact that the world hates them because of who they are. That's part of what makes them who they are. And the only way to break that, go ahead.
We had a guy on from Dark Tourist, Andrew Drury, and he interviewed the KKK
I love
guys.
that show.
Oh, it's great, yeah. He interviewed some KKK guys, and he was offered money to go back to talk to them, and they threatened to kill him because he reported negatively on them. So
and that is, it's because that identity requires that everybody hates it. In order for that identity to exist, it has to demonize everybody else. To demonize everybody else, you have to make sure that the people inside know that everybody else hates them, and it has to become a self-perpetuating cycle. That's part of the group identity of that whole neo-Nazi white nationalist movement. And the only way to break that is, and I have seen it firsthand on the ground. I've helped 3 white nationalists leave the movement myself. But
what is white nationalism?
White nationalism is people who think that whites deserve to have an white ethno-state where America should only be white, and that other races should go have their own nations elsewhere. Basically, just
if they want to be around more white people, Europe, hello.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm not encouraging this at all. I'm just saying,
Europe is a giant hotbed for white nationalism and neo-Nazis though right now, because of the anti-Muslim immigration push. That
I know the countries, I know the states, I know the leaders. Not personally, I just know about the politics behind it. It's terrible. It's disgusting.
It's terrible.
We have a national party here who wants us out of the European Union, and he wants to kick out any foreigners.
And those groups are gaining ground now, and it's because they've shifted their. And I know this because I'm not friends, but I've associates with. Do you ever heard of Christian Picciolini? He's one of America's leading anti-white nationalists. You should look him up. He'd be a great guest on your podcast. Christian Picciolini. Piccolini, I think. I might have misspelled it slightly.
Thank you.
PICC. Yeah, I know PIC. If you do Christian PICC, it'll come up. But he, again, I'm not close with him. But we shared the same book agent for a while, and he works really heavily. He was a leader of the white nationalist movement in the late '80s. He was one of the founders of it in America, and he was responsible for a large portion of the hate movement. And now he spends his life fighting against it and pushing against it and trying to get people out of it, and spends all of his days getting people out of the movement. And so I've seen. Oh, go ahead.
I don't think there should be any white nationalism. White nationalism. I don't think there should be any race thinking that America is just for them.
No.
America should be like a brewing pot of culture.
Diversity is our strength, and we should. I believe in what is written on the steps or the placard on the Statue of Liberty. Send us your tired, your poor, your huddled, your tired masses yearning to breathe free. Shine them my light on the blessed door and let them be with me. That I believe that. I think that we should let people in and let people experience life as we're all human, man. The exclusion that pushed me into that darkness and made me want to hate the whole world, that everybody wanted to look at me like I was dirty and smelly and a monster just because I didn't have a shower, and that kind of darkness, we're doing it on a mass industrialized scale right now. We're making generations of people that hate us. And if we don't stop it, we're going to end up breaking apart. Like, I've been listening a lot recently, mainly because of politics, but I've been listening a lot to the history of World War I and then the rise and fall of the Third Reich. Okay. And the history of World War I and the rise of what happened in Nazi Germany, it parallels freaking one for one what's going on in the rise of extremism in the world. Not necessarily in America per se, but in the world in general, that they're finding ways to demonize large swaths of people and insinuate themselves into arms of power. Like you said, there's the nationalist party that wants to take you out of the European Union. There's the group that took the UK out of Brexit. Now that that really want to take that decision back because it's a really bad decision, but now they can't figure out how to take it back.
Decision.
Oh yeah, nice shape.
It messes us up pretty bad.
Yeah, and it messes us up too. Like we're people talk about global. If anybody ever whines about the globalists, they're blatantly whining about Jews. I'm sorry, it's the truth.
I don't really agree with that. What?
At least in America. In America, it's an alt-right rallying cry.
There's a lot of anti-Semitic sentiment in the United States. I'd never met a Jewish person until about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Through the podcast, but I just never met one in Ireland, or I'd never ask, because I'd never really. I'm not being anti-Semitic. I just didn't really care. I never asked people's religion.
Well, and I don't think because Ireland has been predominantly Catholic and Protestant for forever. So I mean, there's been the famous wars over it and all. So
no, you're right. Yeah,
troubles and likes.
Yeah,
they exist. It's like they're there, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, but again, I think that one of the benefits that we have as the generation coming up, and what you guys have as the next generation coming up, is that we have an ability to look past all of that, thanks to our global media and our ability to connect on a personal level across the planet. Because right now we're talking as people. I'm sitting in the middle of the U.S., in the middle of downtown Denver, and you guys are in Ireland. And we could be sitting here playing video games, chatting like we're just hanging out, drinking a beer together. Yeah. And that hasn't been able to happen before. And that kind of communication, I think that's going to be the key to letting us keep this positive air in the world, letting us remember that we're all just one society and we're all one people and we're all different. We all have individual quirks and that we all deserve to be looked at as individuals, but underneath our skin, we're all pink and we all bleed red.
There you go.
Yeah. That's the message, that we all are human, and it doesn't matter. We have differences, yes, but
it's fundamentally the message that I've been trying to spread. Give love to the ones that you feel deserve it the least, not the ones that deserve it the least, because there's not anybody that deserves it the least. But every one of us has someone that we think doesn't deserve our love. There's like Nazis, like racists, like Jews, if you are racist, like whoever. There's a subgroup that you think doesn't deserve love. Try giving it to them. Try seeing the humanity and who they actually are, and try breaking down these walls that we've put up amongst ourselves. Because it's really the only way we're going to stop all of this is to give love to the ones that we think deserve it the least, because those are the ones that really need it the most. The Nazis who we think deserve love the least, like Daryl Davis, the ones that he's loving, the ones that everybody else hates him just because he's talking to, they're the ones that really need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just speaking about the Nazi thing, you're super into you were investigating the Third Reich. Hitler came from something similar to you. He was beaten to his big dad beat the fuck out of him for his whole life.
Yeah.
He had to run away. He was homeless for a while, and he only found solace in the Nazi movement, National Socialist Party. I don't think he started it.
No, he did. He didn't. But he, from what I was just reading or listening to, he found he was the second one to have it. There was a guy that was right before him, and then he took it and took the ideals of it and took it into being more of a kind of a thuggish thing. And he tried to do a couple militant uprisings before the Nazis actually were able to take power with the beer hall push and stuff, where they tried to just go in, grab the government leaders and say, we're taking power now, and from what I've read,
I feel we're at a point where someone's going to try something similar, not like Nazis, but
well, we have Trump. Trump is destroying all of our levers of power and breaking all of our norms here in America. He is demolishing all of
Because these aren't normal circumstances.
Well,
World War III nearly happened. COVID.
It depends. Well, that's true with COVID, but there's beyond. I'm not even talking about his COVID response, because his COVID response is terrible on its own thing. But his social response, from he has broken the norms of acceptability of. He's basically pushed back the unacceptability of blatant racism in America.
Yeah,
where
it just happens
used to be,
Trump likes to divide people, and I see that a lot with him. Is that he likes to divide people,
and I don't think that he himself is. I think he's racist, but I don't think he's like a neo-Nazi style racist. I just think he's transactionally racist. I think he only likes people that like him back. And if a certain group doesn't give him love, he's not going to give them love in return. And I think that he's just transactional all the way around. But I think that that phenomenon of what he's creating is making a ton of subcultures that turn into those negative, self-perpetuating negative cycles that make positive subgroups. So you end up with the incels. You end up with the Boogaloo Boys, or you end up with the Proud Boys, and you end up with all these small subgroups that take a kernel of negativity and find their positive reinforcement from that, and then spin it out. Because if you look at all their groups, they love themselves.
With the Proud Boys, we talked about this yesterday, I think. It's a sad story of how they came to existence. Like they see what Antifa was doing. They said, "You guys are using fascist techniques to push your." Okay, I assume they have an agenda to push their stuff. And like, okay, we're going to counter that. But then they did the same thing. And here we are.
Well, I think that I am, while I am virulently anti-fascist, I am not Antifa, because Antifa as a group is just like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, you guys are completely self-defeating. Like, whatever tactics you're using are just fucking stupid. Like,
nothing they've done has been anti-fascist.
Nothing. And you can be anti-fascist without being that. The real anti-fascists are the Marines who stormed fucking the beaches in Normandy and D-Day. Like, those are the anti-fascists. Like,
people who sentenced the Nazis to their crimes at the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah, the actual anti-fascists, the people who were standing up to the Nazis and not using, and I think, and this is my personal theory, I personally think that the worldwide culture has been under attack by a technique that uses subverting the things that we love and the things that we try to champion to destroy that very thing.
Yeah.
And I think that Antifa is an example of that. That they take something that is legitimate, fighting Nazis, and you wrap in that the very thing that it hates.
Yeah.
And you try to, and we see it, and there's, with just the recent riots and everything with the protests for racial equality here in America, there were 4 blatant times where it was like whoever's doing these kind of intel attacks are blatantly doing it right now and again and again and again, where there were 4 incidences where there was one of them was that blackout day. I don't know if you ever heard that, but there was a day on social media during all the racial protests where there was a thing called blackout day, where they wanted to have, it was a legitimate thing brought up by the Black Lives Matter protesters, where they wanted to quiet down social media feeds for an afternoon so that the Black Lives Matter people could talk about the issues and like not just argue for a day. So it was supposed to just be a quiet down kind of call for their people. But instead, it got co-opted by this other group that went on to specifically the social media sites that are based around large walls of pictures, and they turned it into a hashtag to put up a black square. So Blackout Day, that was supposed to quiet down communication so that people could actually talk about the issues, turned into a system-wide disruption of communication where it ended up giant walls of black instead of being able to talk about anything.
I remember that, yeah.
I remember.
That was specifically this kind of attack. This was utilizing the things that we like to flip it and to destroy it from within. That was an example of that right there.
Yeah.
And And there's a string of it. The Bernie Bros, it happened to them where they got co-opted,
Yeah, it
legitimate
was
Bernie fans.
definitely a weird one. Like, we're here in Ireland, we took part, but
Yeah,
it meant like we couldn't post a video for the day, and we were trying to do like
yeah,
an everyday podcast, but we do it every day.
uh-huh,
We were very confused because it's exactly what you're saying. If everyone's posting a black cube, all you're going to see is black cubes with one hashtag.
exactly,
Like,
exactly. And the purpose was to quiet communication so people could talk openly.
and
And
well, it did the opposite because everyone felt if I don't do this, I'm going to be called a racist one day.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they co-opted something that was legitimate love that people actually wanted, and they flipped it, and they used its own self to destroy it. Another example would be Bernie Bros. The people who were Bernie Sanders fans in the primaries, legitimate Bernie Sanders fans. They
How
legitimately
can you
wanted their
not be a
candidate.
fan of that guy?
I know, he's a great guy. And they were joined and co-opted by a group who were blatantly trolls, who were just trying to piss off everybody and make Bernie fans look bad. They would go on to places just to flame up comment boards, and do posts just to be blatantly aggressive. And the Bernie fans themselves were like, dude, calm it down. We don't like that. Can you knock it off? But this group of trolls turned into what got labeled the Bernie Bros. And it was to sabotage the movement. Like, it was, you take the thing that you like and you join it and say, I like it too, but you hate me, but you don't realize it. I mean, the theory of this continues even just last week, where they released the photos of people who were released they had the Black Lives Matter supposedly had a day of rage in Seattle, although Black Lives Matter said they didn't have anything to do with it. And they released a picture of the 72 people that were arrested in the day of rage, and every single one of them were white.
But there's a lot of white allies at the Black Lives Matter.
That's true.
protests.
That's true. But you would expect in a racial protest to have at least a couple black people, or at least diverse. At least have some diversity.
You should have seen the European ones.
Yeah.
Like Poland
sure.
I think Poland is the only country that had 0 black people at their one.
Mm-hmm.
But like obviously,
I appreciate that though, because especially in the European, especially after reading what happened in World War II and World War I, I have a lot more respect now for those kinds of protests in places like Poland, because that's where the history came from.
Yeah.
Like the Austrian Black Lives Matter protests, I give them full props because Hitler came from Austria. Like that, this is the birthplace of fascism, and so okay. If now there's Italy, technically, yeah, with Mussolini, which I haven't really read much on him yet. I'm still in to find a history on him because
he wasn't as bad, but he was bad.
Yeah, that's like that scale is kind of like gonorrhea versus syphilis.
Yeah, and then there's General Franco of Spain, and he was. I don't think he was as bad as Mussolini, but
yeah,
some people still think he was bad. Some people think he was good, but he's one of the more controversial ones because he wasn't actually involved in World War II. He just kind of became a leader, and then that was it.
Seeing the evolution of it from the Germanic tribes and the what happened with the breakup after, where they just kept on throwing people into the meat grinder to World War One, like that. I think that in our society in America, World War One doesn't get talked about at all, and I think that's a giant blank spot that people aren't paying any attention to. Like our war history starts with Hitler, and it should really not start with Hitler. It should start a couple decades back. And
I think we should start with Napoleon and go our way from there.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think
shows how. Yeah, it shows how, we all think we're fighting the good fight with the revolution, and then we end up with a dictator, and suddenly he's taking over most of Europe.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that happens in a cycle all over the place.
I like what they did with him, though. They didn't kill him. They banished him to an island. So anyone could talk to this guy about, so why'd you do it? And I think if something like that were to happen today, there shouldn't be something like the Nuremberg trials. These people should be in jail and studied. What made this happen? How did you get this far?
I think the Nuremberg trials were a mistake, only in the sense that they immediately executed. Although I see the reasoning, because of then you don't want to have them be able to like engender followings, and at the time we couldn't have a supermax like we have now.
Everyone's gonna.
Yeah.
If they're still alive, their followers are gonna still have hope in in that idea.
Yeah. So I can understand, but again, for the historical fact of it, I would have liked to been able to interrogate more, and yeah. We've diverted a
We
bit.
got dark. We got dark, lads.
Yeah. Shit.
So to
And they
end
say
on a
video
happy
games.
note,
Especially
They
that
say
last
video
Bill Burr
games
stuff.
cause violence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I do not. I do not think
You know,
video games cause
I'm
violence.
there
I think
mining.
they're.
I'm there mining diamonds in Minecraft, and they're telling me I'm the villain.
I think. I think that is. I think that that's an example of arrogant asshole adults not wanting to take responsibility for the shit that they've caused in the world.
Mm.
I think that video games are a form of art and expression, and are recently some of the best art and expression out. I mean, there's some beautiful games. Let one of those people saying video games cause violence. Let them play Journey and let them see how violent they feel afterwards.
Play Cooking Mama for 3 hours straight, and then you tell me who's the violent one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
While at the same time they're watching the nightly news and Jerry Springer, and like they're listening to Rush Limbaugh on the talk radio, where all the violence is actually coming from. No, I think that video games are not at all. If I were going to blame the media, I would blame drive time talk radio. I would blame AM radio, because that is where you have the people like Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and Tucker Carlson, who I don't even see as right-wing commentators. I see them as agitators, because they just want to. They just constantly want to blow everything up and break everything apart. And
I know.
No, I wouldn't. Like, I wouldn't listen to any of that
We're either
stuff.
side of the pond.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
Our radio stations are so nice. Like
Yeah.
news talk, they interview like cancer survivors or people who've done TED
Oh, God.
Talks.
no, if that'd be fun. We have, so in the radio here, AM radio. So Sean Hannity has a daytime TV show on Fox, right, where you can watch him on Fox for an hour. But he also has a 4-hour show on the radio where you can call in and you can talk to him directly. And so it's like just distilled like all day long, nothing but that kind of division, and it's been going back for decades. Like that I think that's another one of those things that flies under the radar for what the cause of all this really is. I think that's part of it. But no, I do not blame video games. I think that more people should play them.
correct.
I think that some music can. I think that music can have an impact. I think that violent and racist music can definitely be cathartic, because music, I think, has more of an.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes.
We did a little quick video on the Spotify employees wanting to take down Joe Rogan. But a while after, he made a comment on it, like, have you guys heard the lyrics in some of the songs you guys put up?
Uh-huh.
And like it just clicked, like, have you heard some of the rap music?
Yeah.
Like,
no, I am not for taking down Joe Rogan. I don't like some of his stuff that he does, and I think that he's really veering off recently.
I'm surprised you haven't been on.
I would be on Joe Rogan in a heartbeat.
You know you have to apply to get on.
There's an application.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to apply, I'm going to apply for you.
Yeah, if you can apply for me, I would love to. I would love.
I have your email. You just need your email and basically just tell you about it a little bit. So we can apply for you. Yeah, and they'll send you an email then. Yeah.
Hell yeah, I would love to.
I was really surprised you
I'd
weren't
do
on
Joe
it.
Rogan, because I think he's veered recently into conspiracy theory territory, and I think he's embraced some conspiracy theorists a bit too much.
With Alex Jones, yes, but since then,
yeah.
No. I think that's a funny episode because of how crazy that guy gets. But that's kind of
Alex. There's been a couple of them where, like the QAnon stuff, that, like, I'm all for differences of opinion, but I think that giving too much airtime to somebody that thinks that this is a satanic pedophile cult that's killing children and drinking adrenochrome, and I think that kind of stuff is just makes you lose credibility to me. Like,
I
can
understand
say
that,
it. You can
but he
say it all
got
you
the
want,
Epstein
but-
thing right before anyone else did.
Well, but not really, because Epstein was a known quantity. Epstein wasn't a secret. Epstein was a quiet secret where, like, the general public didn't know much about it. But Epstein in Hollywood circles was wide known for a long, long time. Epstein was like Cosby. Cosby came out and everybody was all shocked because Bill Cosby was a rapist. Stand-up comedians knew Bill Cosby was a rapist 25 years ago. Like, just because it's now hitting the national psyche, like he was a bit recent on calling out Epstein in public, but he wasn't, and he was behind the ball on Weinstein. Because at the same time he's calling out Epstein, he's working for Weinstein.
I guess the thing is with him is if your entire life is about conspiracy theories, it's gonna fuck with your head.
Yeah.
If it's if everything's a big government conspiracy.
And he sees and I think that he's only recently kind of fallen too much into it, because I've seen where he's on the other side of it, where he's like calling down Eddie Bravo off the ledge, where Eddie Bravo is going off on some weird flat Earth shit, and Joe Rogan's calling him down and being like, "No, dude, the Earth's round. Like, it's okay. Like, space is real." And like I've seen that, so I know I respect him. I like him a lot. He's a good guy, but recently, mainly the QAnon stuff and for me, it was the embracing of Roger Stone. Roger Stone and that whole, like, Roger Stone's a shady criminal bastard. Like, he does not deserve any kind of airtime given to him at all. And Joe gives him a lot of airtime. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's some people I think shouldn't be on that show, but then I have to retract that, because I think everyone should be on that.
I can't say they shouldn't be on the show, because again, it's Joe's show. You definitely should be able to have that show and have it on Spotify and have it be carried. Like, I think that even Alex Jones should be able to have his show. I think that we should all have it on, so he should be able to get to laugh at it. I personally think, and I get attacked for this on my own side, I am against censoring PC language. Like, I think that people should not tell people to stop saying offensive things. I think that is part of the cause of what we're hitting now. Like, we should let the racists say all the offensive things that they want, and let the people make the gay jokes and make the fat jokes, and we should let them do that all that they want. Both because we can then combat that with our own ideas, and it points us out, hey, that guy's a racist. Like, it keeps it on the surface, and it because otherwise, what they did, and I learned this from talking to Christian Picciolini, what they did was they was blatantly, in the neo-Nazi movement especially, a movement from boots to suits, they called it, where they dropped their Doc Martens, they grew out their hair, they stopped wearing the red laces, they stopped getting the tattoos on their knuckles, and they wore a suit, and they went to the police academy, and they went to the law school, and they went to college, and they kept the same identity. They just took off the badge of honor that talks about it, and they went underground.
Wasn't that something in the OJ case? One guy was actually a Nazi.
I don't remember. Probably. I know that in it was very ironic that the cop that beat Rodney King was named Officer Coon. I thought that was kind of funny.
Also, do you know what? Fuck OJ, because he's the only reason we have the Kardashians. It's another reason why I fucking hate his guts.
There you go.
I think that's the best sentence of the podcast.
I have to sit through 18 seasons of keeping up the Kardashians because some dude killed his wife. You know what I mean?
Bad form.
Oh, God. That was good. First off, no one should ever have to sit through 18 seasons of Keeping Up the Kardashians, except for the Kardashians.
God, no.
They should be forced to watch that on repeat for the rest of life.
Shit.
You're saying you're against deplatforming.
I am not against deplatforming. Well, it depends. I'm against deplatforming certain things. Like, I'm against giving Richard Spencer a show.
Okay.
But
do you not think everyone should be heard?
I think everybody should be heard. I think that even people like Richard, I have actually done it. I did it when I was in my teens. The KKK did a rally when I was in my teens at the steps of the Capitol here in Denver, and I stood on the side of the KKK side, not on their side of the rally, just with the cops there to defend their right to talk. They have the right. They have the right to speak. We all have the right to speak. Free speech means free speech. It doesn't mean that free speech until it hurts my feelings.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
So I think that the same way that when we tell kids don't smoke cigarettes, you can't smoke, that's when they're going to pick up the Juul constantly and be vaping all day long.
There you go.
And the same way that if we tell them, well, you can't call that person a bad name, well, then they're going to think of every fucking bad name they possibly can.
Yeah.
Like what the hell? Like how are you going to restrict thought and restrict language? Like, you can't do that. First off, it's the method of totalitarian governments is to restrict your thought and restrict your language. So if someone's trying to do that, big red flag. And you can't do it in the long term, especially in the age of social media where everyone is walking around with the totality of some human knowledge in their pocket.
Yeah.
But
But I think it's a good thing because I can't make up shit in an argument anymore. Like, me and my friends were having an argument about like something that may have there's the COVID cases
are gone.
And there was no bullshit. It was article, fact checked, like studies. You know, like we had to just go down to the science of it.
Yeah.
There was no.
And it pushed the paranormal off the news and into A&E. Like it pushed it went off the news and into daytime TV for housewives, because now ghosts aren't a thing. Because if they were, we'd have found them.
Well, you don't know. We've talked to a lot of paranormal investigators.
You know, we like talking to paranormal investigators. Those guys are cool.
I won't close. Be close-minded and close all that off. But it's more that like Bigfoot and those there used to be a big market before the internet where there was a huge like paranormal thing where like I'm talking to the spirits and I'm having this seance and like most of that has gotten blown up. Like the whole talking to your dead grandma.
You've seen Dark Tourist,
right?
right?
Oh yeah. I
that girl with the two bars, and she was like, "Is Jeffrey Dahmer here?" Crossed the rods, and you see her tongue go like,
Exactly. You should watch. Do you know Penn and Teller?
Yes, I like Penn and Teller.
They have a show called Bullshit, and it's on. If you have a Hulu, it's on Hulu. And Bullshit, they actually go to seance or a card reader, tarot card reader, and they have 3 people go into the same tarot card reader. Oh no, they did it. The same person with 3 different tarot card readers, and they had the tarot card reader come in one after the other one. They had the same guy give the same story to 3 different ones, and they got vastly different opinions from 3 vastly different people. And yeah, it's a fun. They did the same thing with like feng shui. Set up an apartment for feng shui for the decoration. Like, the energies, this really makes the energies move. And 3 different people came in and did it completely differently. So yeah. It's
cool. But do you have anything to finish on before we head off?
For me, no. I just want to say that come find me on. I have a YouTube channel. I haven't uploaded in a while, but I'm planning on uploading soon. Aaron Stark. Come to my Facebook group. I have started a Facebook group called You Are Not Alone. It's all based on love and support for people who are in that darkness who need to find a way out. That's all one word with the words capitalized. You are not alone. I am on Twitter at StarkDad1313. And I'm open and available to do any kind of interviews, podcasts. I would love to come to Ireland. So, yeah.
Well, if you do, let us know.
I would love to.
There's only one men's mental health organization in Ireland, and we've spoken before. I'd love to put you in contact with them.
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Be awesome.
Yeah, we're going to apply to get you on Joe Rogan. So
that'd be really cool.
People will see you up there soon enough.
You better shout out this podcast, man. You better remember Awfully Irish podcast when you're big.
Never.
I'd like to thank all the little people who were there for me to step on my way to the top.
Anyway.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Aaron Stark. Great guy, obviously, as you can tell. Yeah, love the beard, but love the story.
Thank you.
So,
thank you very much.
If you got this far, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell your grandma about the podcast. Take it handy.
Look, jeez.